Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm back to talk about Legacies, episode 308, titled Long Time No See, which premiered Thursday, March 25th, 2021 on the CW. I'm recording roughly 40 minutes after the episode has aired, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about this episode. Otherwise, my other video reminders are up on screen. Take a moment to remind yourselves of those. Quick YouTube shoutouts to Golden Angel 15 and the Bang Mokiana, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but thank you so much for your multiple comments on the previous video. And also just a general thank you to everybody watching these videos and coming back to see what I have to say. It truly means a lot to me, and it still surprises me every time I see it. But yeah, I really don't know what to say about this episode, so let's just get started right into it, see what actually comes out of my mouth for it. But what happened in this episode? So the episode quote of "No time, no see" was actually said by Landon to Hope when he returns from the prison world. I know, big spoiler right there. So there's that. When it comes to the timeline, I think it's supposed to be the day after the events of 307. I think. Because it doesn't feel like they sit on the fact that they have the Ascendant long. But it's definitely a month between the two times. So it's definitely been a month since the prison world was created in 304? No, 303. So it's been a month since then and now, because they were saying, right? Yes? No. Maybe not. They were saying it would be a month if they had to wait for the next celestial event. But this is me assuming that there's one every month, which shouldn't be the case. But anyways, I'm assuming it's the day after the events of the previous episode. When it comes to the episode reminder, I guess you can kind of say that it's the rescue mission for Landon. That's literally Hope's objective, and that everybody has to either fall in line with her or they have to like kind of get out of her way, essentially. The featured creature, though, of the episode is actually Chiron, the ferryman from Greek mythology, who ferries souls through the underworld. He can also lead souls back to the land of the living. So there's that. Also, I will say this before we continue. He looked so cool. Like, just the way they constructed it, the way they had him presented, and it's just like that. Looked so cool. So yeah. My favorite looking one so far this season. So there's that. Episode storylines. I'm really gonna pick two, but they are still revolved around the fact that they're trying to save Landon. But the first one is going back to the prison world, and the second one is calling on the ferryman. Now the first storyline is after Hope and Lizzie astral projected to the prison world to find proof that Landon is in fact there, and they do by finding his note. Hope now won't stop until she actually gets into the prison world to go in and grab him out of it, despite MG's protest of how dangerous that would be. Fortunately, everybody sides with Hope, which leads to MG running away with the Ascendant with Lizzie's help, but then only to be betrayed by her, because she actually brings the Ascendant to Hope because Hope brought Josie into the magic mayhem, which Lizzie did not want happening. But in the end, they do end up getting Landon back, but they say it's because of storyline number 2, and that is with Cleo summoning Chiron the ferryman in hopes of having him lead Landon's soul back to them. And Cleo, Caleb, and Alaric were trying to do this before Hope opened the prison world up, and the way they timed it, it made it seem like the ferryman did its job. I still have questions about that, which we'll talk about later. So there's that. But we do find out that from Cleo, when she summoned the Chiron, she used a spell, or she believes she used a spell to call on a specific quote-unquote monster. But it took out a lot of power from her, because when Caleb found her, she had her nose bleeding. She was very weak. So that's dangerous. But the last scene of the episode shows Hope and Landon kissing by the dock, but they were being watched in the bushes by this prison world warrior who is like completely fully cloaked. It looks like he's wearing skeletal bones around him as like armor or something. He wears a mask. He's completely covered, but he's watching them from the bushes. So we first see him during the dream in the prison world, we also see him during their astral projection to the prison world, but now he's in the real world. So it's very possible that he came in through the brief moment that the Ascendant had opened their portal to the prison world. But yeah, and he seems very fixated on Landon or on Hope. It's one of the two, or maybe it's both. But I have questions about that later too, which we'll get into. Any character little thoughts? So MG, he's actually not just an outcast for the Super Squad, like the synopsis led. He's an outcast to the whole school. And because of this, he's finding that a lot of people aren't even listening to what he has to say. They're pretty much treating him as if he's invisible, which leads him questioning whether or not is the school his home anymore, and should he really stick around and be forced to watch the people he cares for be put in danger, and he can't do anything to stop it because none of them are listening to him. So that's where we're at with MG. With Jed, we find out that the witches have been putting scarlet letters all over his clothes because of what happened with MG, Alyssa, and him getting in the middle of that. It also looks like he's hanging out with Wade a bit more, which I'm kind of liking. So that's kind of been fun to see, explore. And we did get confirmation from Jed that the wolf pack is low in numbers. Probably due to the fact that there is only technically 30 students at the school, which we do see a few more students when they were in that cafeteria scene. We did see a few extras being part of the student body. But yeah, it's not as packed as it once was. And then with Cleo, we find out that she believes that magic is not good or bad, but it's the intent of the caster that makes it good or bad. Which makes sense. I definitely believe that mentality, because magic is just magic. It's how you use that magic is what dictates it as good or bad. It's how the person uses it. It's not the magic itself. So I'll leave it at that. Tidbit-wise, though, we do get the mention of Dorian. He makes a phone call, but we don't see him. But it's in the phone call to Alark that we find out that Dorian lets Alark know that Josie skipped school because of Hope, which tipped Lizzie off to the fact that her sister was being brought into magical means. Ethan was not at all shown in the episode, and we only got one scene with Finch, with her and Josie at the locker discussing what their first date would be, and then only to be interrupted by Hope, who gets Josie to ditch school with her to help, which I think which causes problems with Finch, because just before Hope showed up, Finch proposed the idea of them skipping school, and Josie seemed a little bit maybe hesitant before she was saying like she could be wild and she could do it without any trouble, which I think Finch had a bit of doubts that she'd have to persuade her a little bit more. But then Hope comes in, she makes a comment about her height, and then with one word, Josie's ready to go skip with Hope. So that's going to cause some, I have a feeling it's going to, or Josie alluded to the fact that it's going to cause problems with Finch because she ditched on her again. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, how many more times at the start of it, can you say, take no's, you know? And also, we have Hope. At the beginning of the episode, Hope is still very angry with Cleo for killing the leprechaun. But it seems by the end of the episode, Hope is pretty much on the outs with a lot of people by her actions. But she seems like she doesn't really care much because she has Landon now. We'll talk about that later. But that seems to be the vibe that was given off. Most shocking moment of the episode was actually when Landon returned. It was when the whole Ascendant spell was happening, and then all of a sudden they get intercepted. Someone stops the spell. And I actually thought it was MG because he's the only one that's actually closest to them because yes, he got desiccated, but then it could have been, I didn't know how long he would have been desiccated for. Maybe he could have just died and then just be brought back again. But then it turned out it was actually Landon. So then it's like, oh, did they open the portal enough to get Landon through? But then to find out that, like, no, it's because Chiron led Landon to them. But I'm like, oh, okay, how did they know where to be and the timing of it, right? So it's just like, it was Landon, but nothing added up, which I'm going to bring up later why I have a theory about that. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be random questions when I bring it up. Just FYI. But let's move on to top 3 favorite moments. Um, Huge favorite is just this. I found with the Saltzman family, they had a lot more interactions among themselves, especially Alaric being able to have scenes with both of his daughters. Yes, separately, but they still had both scenes uh, with him. And then also the sisters finally had scenes together, which we haven't seen for quite some time. So I did really appreciate that. It was very, between the sisters, it was very, I really liked that we got to see how much they would really like do or die for each other. With Lizzie, we saw her willing to betray MG if it meant saving her sister. And Josie, we saw her willing to take on and be infected with dark matter, or dark magic or black magic, because Lizzie was taking the brew force of it. So she's willing to put herself in an addicting situation for her, and try to alleviate that for her sister. And it was just very interesting to what depths they were willing to put themselves in danger in order to, or how much they were willing to put themselves in a bad position if it meant saving the other one. So it was very, yes, that's unhealthy. I know that. But it was also just great to see the willingness they would have to be there for each other, I guess. So it was great to see them. Like I said before, we haven't had many scenes with them together. So it was just great for me to see that sisterhood between them. And also just Lizzie's full motivation was to keep Josie out of it. Not because she doesn't want her sister there, but it's because she wants her sister to have the human life she wanted. She wants her to stick to what she started, kind of a thing. And I really like that she was willing to do a lot. I think if it was season 1, no, I can't really say that. Because I would like to believe, even though the Lizzie we had in season 1, who a lot of the times was self-absorbed, I would still like to think she'd still do whatever she could for her sister. If that made sense, I don't know. But I do also, so then when it comes to Alaric and Josie, or maybe, yeah, I'll just talk to them now. I really like they got that moment at the very end where he's telling her that, no, you don't have to do black magic with you. You can still go to school. And then when she expresses her renewed choice of staying away from the school and sticking to a human life, and then saying, she also name drops Caroline kind of, and saying like she talked to mom and how they both have that her parents have a friend in town who has a room, and Josie wants to go live in that room to kind of further distance herself from the school. I really like that instead of getting angry or upset, Alaric expressed that yes, he was upset, but he didn't want to stand in the way of Josie going on the path that made her happy, which I really appreciate that they even had the time to actually talk that out and have him show support for her trying to take this new stage in her life. And it's just like, I really appreciated they got to share that moment. And then I also liked it when Alaric had a similar moment with Lizzie, and how he was able to confide in her in the fact that of like, he was put in a hard position where like he sees both sides of things, but he knows that he can't really stop it because they're just going to do it anyways, kind of a thing. But then he's like really trying to find answers so that things don't happen. But then he also took the time and realized that what Lizzie's position was, and how she didn't side with Hope, but she sided with MG. And then Alaric was wondering, well, why make that choice? And then making the comments like, we all do things, we all have blind spots for the people that we love. And in that moment, it was meant to be for MG. But then that comes around to the fact that Lizzie realizing that she has a blind spot for her sister. So it was just great to have Alaric have a one-on-one time with Lizzie, and having her be a part of that conversation of like, well, what are you going to do now, kind of a thing. So that has been great. Another favorite. This is a hard one because I'm putting MG and Lizzie. Reason why is because there's many different emotional facets we got in this. One, MG's speech to the group about why he lied about the Ascendant totally makes sense. Completely understand that for sure. So I really liked it. And then to have Lizzie back him up, I thought that was great. It's something that like I'm really glad to see happening. And then him having that speech to her telling us like it was great to have to know that you had my back, like I've had your back all along. And like that was really great, but then when she betrayed him, it's like, why'd you have to ruin this moment? Now you've kind of tainted everything that I thought that you sided with him. I'm gonna in my head like to believe that she sided with MG because she believed, and it's only when she found out that Josie was now in the hands of Hope, then that's when she decided like, oh, I have to do whatever it takes to save my sister. And it just so happened that MG had to be betrayed in that process. But I kind of want, part of me is kind of frustrated that Lizzie didn't just tell MG about what was happening with Joe and then just have MG either help her or like so that they were upfront with each other. Because I feel like that was something that hurt MG was the most, was the fact that Lizzie just fully betrayed him. And what he was thinking was like, oh, you finally have my back. And then like her apology while she was siphoning his vampirism for her own magic, that apology was so emotional. And it may be even, it's another reason why it's part of my favorite is because of the emotion I felt. It made me very upset over the idea that she was upset, but also feeling for Lizzie because you knew how much she did not want to betray MG. But her desperation to save Josie was overpowering that. So it was both great performances by both of them. And it's just, that's why it's my favorite, is because of what their performance brought in me emotionally. I just kind of wish that there was no betrayal between them. Because it's like, I want to see them on good page together. It's just, they were so close. And then Hope's desperation got between that. And it's just like, man. So there's that. Anyways, the last favorite I had was Cleo and Caleb. It was great seeing them work together. It was great seeing them both confiding each other about their both friendship issues with Hope and MG and how they're trying to help each other out. And it was also just great to see Cleo taking a step forward with summoning Chiron, and then to have them both sing. I mean, we get Alaric singing badly to Chiron to kind of win his favor, and then Caleb stepping in to save the plea, and then to have him, Alaric, and Cleo all finishing it off at the end was all pretty cool. And then to kind of have like Cleo and Caleb's commentary while Alaric was singing, it was just like, it was a great vibe. And then the whole breakfast thing between them, I'm really liking the friendship between Cleo and Caleb. They end up making it something more. I could definitely see it, and I don't mind it, but I hope it's not something that's rushed. That's the thing. So there's that. And let's go on to Peeved Moments. And it's actually pretty shocking to me, but then not so much, is the fact that a peeve was the fact that is really Hope's actions in this episode. Like, I understand her desperation to get Landon. I truly do. But the one thing that really made it a peeve for me is during that Ascendant moment where when they find out, when Lizzie said that the ritual or the spell was a lot more painful than she remembered, and then Josie realizing that it's because of the black magic that the necromancer had inside him has now pretty much made the prison world radioactive, and now that black magic was infecting both Hope and Lizzie. And Lizzie was in pain, and Josie was begging them to just sever the connection, to end it now, or they could die. What pissed me off was that Hope said no. She said no, and she wanted to continue. And yet she sees the black magic, you see the veins infecting Lizzie to the point that Josie joins in to try to break the connection, but instead she gets infected too. And you see Hope's reaction to both the twins getting infected, and she had the audacity to say, I'm sorry. No attempts at all from her to try to sever the connection. She was like more of like, okay, I'm doing this. And it was just like, and like, screw the consequences. It really pissed me off. Like, I could understand if it was just Hope and she got infected with black magic and she pushed forward, then it's like, okay, it's her life on the line, it's her decision. But her actions to still continue, even though Lizzie was saying like it was painful, it was hurting, and she was getting infected, And then to see Josie, who was so worried about having that darkness within her again, also put herself in that position because she wanted to take some of the pain away from her sister. And yet she still pushed forward with the spell. It's just like, no, Hope, usually you at least have one of my favorite slots. And in this episode, you did not get any of them. And it was a huge disappointment. It was just, in this episode, it was a huge reminder of the fact that Hope, being as powerful as she is, if she doesn't focus it on the right thing, she can do a lot of damage. And she has a lot of influence too. And also, it kind of bugged me too, because in a way, she also brings up her parents, which I loved. But then at the same time, it's like she brings them up knowing they made these mistakes. And yet she kind of repeated those mistakes, knowing what the repercussions were going to be, but she didn't care, kind of a thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being judgmental, or maybe it's because I just did not like. I don't know. That whole scene just sits wrong, because then when Landon appears and you see Hope being joyful over the fact that she finally has the love of her life back, when the camera went to Lizzie and Josie, their reactions to that were like not of like joy, like we did it. It was more of like the fact of like, what the hell did she put us through, kind of a thing, or like, I can't believe we just went through that, kind of a thing. I mean, there was the fact that, like, yes, Hope has her reunion with Landon, but then also at the same time, it's like she showed no concern toward the twins while they were like holding on to each other for dear life, having this black magic be inside them and swirling, and Hope just showed no disregard for them. And it's just like, it just fully solidifies what everybody's been saying, is that Landon is Hope's blind spot. She will pretty much destroy anything to ensure that his safety. It's pretty much save him and everybody else be damned. And I know that's very similar to another relationship on the Vampire Diaries, but seeing how that has spiraled out of control and has led to so many terrible things, or so many, I shouldn't say terrible things, it's led to so many repercussions for other characters. When we're also on a show where it's, I can't even say that, because the characters that usually do these positions, anybody else who's in the backlash is usually people they don't care about. But with Hope, the people in the backlash on this are people she does care about. So it's like, I don't know, it hits differently, I guess. I don't know. But the peeve just makes it like, I don't know. The fact that Hope and Landon reunited is kind of tainted over the fact that Hope was willing to let Lizzie and Josie get consumed by black magic with her, all for the sake of getting Landon back. It didn't seem fair. So I'll leave it at that. But let's move on to random questions very quickly. The first one is, if Malivore consumed the necromancer with all that black magic in him, does that mean that Malivore is like powered up somehow by that black magic? Is he even affected by that black magic now inside of his swirling darkness? Like, does that even do anything to him? I don't know. Next question. Who do you think the Bone Shield Prison World Warrior that we saw, who do you think is that? For some reason, a part of me thinks it's Landon. And the person we think Hope rescued, and she's kissing on the dock, I don't think that's Landon. The reason why is, though, every other time we saw the Bone Warrior, I thought it was Landon, thinking like, oh, maybe he spent so much time in this prison world with time moving differently. Maybe he's had to do some things. Maybe he's killed some creatures or something, and like he's completely covered, and like he's now very like soldier, like battle weary. Like I said in the previous episode, previous episodes, where I hope that's kind of the journey Landon would take, would be more of a fighter stance. But then I'm thinking that. But then when we see Landon get rescued, but then we also see the warrior watching Landon, a part of me still thought that it was Landon in the warrior. And just because of the fact that when Hope is talking to Landon, and she asks, what do you remember? He says he remembers that the last night that they were together, which is when they slept together, and then all he remembers is darkness. And he said that and that's all he remembers. But we saw him write that Malivore note. So if this was still that same Landon, he should have remembered that, because him leaving the prison world should not have affected his memories. So that has me thinking this Landon that's kissing Hope on the dock, that's why I'm thinking it's not really Landon. If that makes sense. And that's why I'm still thinking that Bone Warrior may be Landon, that we saw write the note in the prison world. Right? Because then we also didn't actually see Chiron bringing Landon's soul back. We just saw him appear to interrupt that Ascendant spell. Like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like where my head's at with that. But, yeah. So there's that. But what do you guys think? Please let me know in the comments down below. Am I completely off, or do I have something going for this theory? Next question. Will MG really leave the school? God, I hope not. I mean, we already lost Raphael. I don't need to lose another main character. And then, like, MG, he's usually the positivity of the characters, like, so upbeat and very, like, glass half full kind of a thing. And to have him think that the school is not his home anymore is very heartbreaking. I really hope we don't lose him. Because I still want to learn more about MG. I mean, I'm still waiting for Ripper MG too, because there was that storyline from season 1. And the last question. Which friend was Josie alluding to when she mentioned that Caroline, when she mentioned that Mom said that they had a friend, that her and Alaric had a friend in town with another room that Josie could use in the meantime? Immediately, I thought Damon, but then the phrasing "a friend in town" makes me think like it's someone who's not normally in town, but then I'm assuming Damon still lives in Mystic Falls with Elena. So then that's why I'm thinking, well, if it's not Damon, who is visiting town with a room? And then I'm thinking maybe Bonnie? I don't know. But that name drop is like, can't you just say the name? Like, why just be friend? Why just say friend? I want to know who it is. Just, you can name drop a character from the Vampire Diaries, like, please. But let's move on to predictions very quickly. Based off the promo for 309, it's actually going to come back on April 8th. So we are going to get a week break before it returns. And it looks like we kind of get like a pink gremlin thingy, bringing conflict between people from the looks of it. We do see Landon calling it cute, that's for sure. And somehow it lands with Lizzie being thrown into a pool or something. I don't know. But the synopsis reads, first off, the history is repeating itself. That could refer to many things, first off. But it reads that as tensions build between Hope and Lizzie, the latest monster's arrival at the school will force them to set aside their differences in order to defeat it. Meanwhile, Alar comes up with an excuse to keep tabs on Josie at Mystic Falls High, and Cleo helps Caleb cope with the recent fallout with MG. Landon and Ethan also appear. I really don't know what to make of that. I really hope this pink gremlin looking thing is not going to be like the actual gremlins, where it's like they're all like happy and like friendly fuzzies, but then it's like when you feed them, they're like terrifying monsters. I hope not. But then that wouldn't surprise me, but I hope it's not like the same physical interpretation as that. Also, this gremlin thing reminded me of a Furby. Like, I thought Furby first before gremlin came into my head. So that's funny. But yeah. I guess that's pretty much it. I'm kind of surprised that we're going to get a hiatus. I mean, I'm actually surprised we got an episode today, because technically Walker went on hiatus, and usually they air episodes at the same time. Like, new ones come on at the same time for them. So the fact that we got one this week, but yet we're not getting one next week, and I'm thinking Walker's doing the same thing. I don't know. But it'll definitely be interesting to see where this goes, because I'm still trying to figure out what the overall, like, what the big season goal is supposed to be. I mean, Landon is definitely back a lot sooner than I thought he was going to be. So yeah, but then at the same time, it's like Hope would have been in a more destructive state after finding out that Landon is alive. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But what did you guys think of this episode? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your own thoughts, theories, and opinions about all that good stuff. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. I read blog promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all that good stuff, all for one, found in one place. Go check that out. I am behind, but I do plan to update it shortly because I had my last day of my program today. Very emotional, but because of it, I do have a week break before I start my new program. So I'm hoping to set aside a full day of Tumblr reblogs and WordPress updates, which link for that is down below as well. Anything on WordPress is more organized and detailed, and it has everything I post online there. So check that out as well. So that be on the lookout for that, for some changes there. Otherwise, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope you come back in 2 weeks when we come back with 309s. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wish you all a great day, great week wherever you are. Please stay safe. Please wear a mask. And until then, bye, guys.